Hello, Houston. Well, here we are, another episode of the Houston Hour. It is Thursday, February 25th. We're about to round out the month of February, and as many of y'all probably know who follow us on social media, I have a brand new special guest co-host, the one and only, my buddy, Heidi Vaughan with Heidi Vaughan Fine Art. Say hello, Heidi.
Hello. It's such an honor to be here, Mr. McKhinney. You're my buddy, too.
Well, this is going to be great because you know what? For the next couple of months, you're going to hear Heidi Vaughan on the Houston Hour airwaves. We're going to be talking about, like we always do, committed to Houston arts, happenings, entertainment, history, all that great things. And you've got a really strong background in the arts and actually marketing, too. Tell audience members a little bit about yourself.
Oh, golly. I own an art gallery, Heidi Vaughan Fine Art. I am representing 20 local artists. They are artists who are generally categorized as mid-career, which means they've been in important exhibitions. Most of them are in museum collections. All of them are in important private collections. Some of them important public art collections. And I'm also a credentialed appraiser with the International Society of Appraisers. I appraise art for individuals, corporations, museums, and I work a lot in the secondary market. Also, I help people liquidate fine art assets. It's not unusual for me to hear from someone who has just inherited an estate, for example, and they might have art that is not, to their taste, and they need to know what they have, what it's worth, and how they can turn it into cash. And I help people do that 7 days a week.
Look at that. And I think what's great about you, too, is you have a background in marketing, public relations, and it really kind of translates. I think people need, artists specifically, they're great at what they do, but they really need a voice. They need someone to go out there and make sure that people know more about what they do. So tell folks about your background in journalism and PR and marketing, all that great stuff.
Okay. Well, I got an undergraduate degree from journalism back in the 80s from the University of Wisconsin in Madison. I'm from Chicago. I worked in Chicago for a company called Burson Marsteller, which is part of Young and Rubicam. And I worked on big national brands like McDonald's and Gatorade and Perrier and Pella Windows. And I worked with Habitat for Humanity and the Environmental Defense Fund. Real important campaigns with huge budgets. And I really learned everything you could possibly learn about marketing. But it was before social media. Now, of course, I'm super active on social media because of my business. So I do that too.
And you mentioned your business too, because art is really well translated to Instagram, for example. People look for that. I think it's probably one of the first things you do when you look for an artist is you want to see their Instagram page.
Absolutely. I think in the past, artists have really focused on their website, and their website is important. But truly, if you're just out talking to someone at a party, certainly at an art fair, they don't want you to show them their website. They want you to just say, oh, I represent this artist, and they look them up immediately on Instagram. And it's super important for artists to have a great Instagram page.
Now, and you're a mom. Talk about that. Talk about your voice.
Oh my goodness. I haven't talked about that for a while. Okay. So, my baby is 23. He just graduated from Texas Tech with a degree in business. I'm so proud of him. He just did that in December. And my daughter is 27. She is a graduate of the wonderful University of St. Thomas, and she currently is getting a PhD in microbiology at Baylor College of Medicine.
Wow. Well, I love that. And also too, you're not a new, voice here at the Houston Hour because you've been on the show numerous times with a lot of your artists. Tell people about some of the past. If you're just tuning in now for the first time, by the way, Heidi Vaughan with Heidi Vaughan Fine Art is my new special guest co-host here on the Houston Hour. She'll be joining us for the next couple of months, just really taking us on a journey through what she does. And I can tell you now, we met a couple of weeks ago and talked about some possible guests. and boy, she's got some great guests lined up for the show. I mean, I'm really, really
Oh,
excited.
thank you,
Yeah.
thank you. I know a lot of very interesting people.
Well, you
for
sure
sure
do, because whether you're selling them art or whether you're connecting with them as a representative of what they do. I mean, some really fun people and people on the performing arts side, the visual arts side, and even some Houston legends that you've been able to connect us to. So, Houston Hour listeners, get ready for some really, really great guests on board the show as well. But talk about some of the past guests we've had on that are your clients. I mean, the people that you represent.
Let's see. Well, the world's most famous gift wrap artist, Alton Dulaney, our resident art cowboy.
Yay.
Let's see. Thedra Color Ledford,
Yes.
perhaps the most colorful artist you'll ever meet. John V. Mahimtra Folmsby. She has the big mural on Taylor Street, right by the silos at Sawyer Yards. Susan Budge, who's a fabulous sculptor. She has been, she's in 10 museums, including the Smithsonian. Let's see who else. Avishai Mosenin, a mixed media, mostly photography, collage photography artist. The incredible Emilie Duval, with the extremely intellectual, complex, abstract art.
Who we're going to hear about later on today in the show, too.
Oh,
I'm
I'm
so
guest. Delighted to have her on. And then Roberta Harris.
Yes.
She had a year-long residency at the Whitney and 3 retrospectives under her belt, which is really a very big deal. And that's just...
a few of them, yeah.
Yeah, that's just a few of them.
Well, this is great. I am just so excited to be able to have you joining us on, like I said, the KPFT airwaves over here at the Houston Hour. And we really are committed to bringing you the best of Houston arts, culture, and entertainment, and Houston happenings, and a little bit of history, too. Why not? And I want to thank everybody, who's been listening to us the last couple of, months here. And I'll always want to remind you, by the way, if you have any show ideas, if you have any feedback, you can always email us at thehoustonhour@gmail.com. It's just as simple as that. TheHoustonhour@gmail.com. And we love the feedback. Give us some ideas for some future guests, because guess what? We listen to that, and we actually do read the emails. We make sure people can, be a voice for all that as well. So
can we tell them about the archive?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
So if you missed any of those wonderful interviews that I just mentioned, or any of the others of the show, it's just fabulous. You can go to the KPFT website and go under archives. It's not under H, it's under T.
That's
for
right.
The Houston Hour. And you can listen to all of these interviews and you can share them with your friends and listen to them when it's convenient for you. And they're all really good.
They are. And thank you for mentioning that, too, because I want to make sure people do listen to past episodes. You can do that at your leisure, and we love for you to learn more about the guests that we have on the show and support those guests, support those artists, those guests, those individuals that are out there promoting what they do. And we are looking forward, like I said, to bringing you more of that. Well, being a gallerist and being in Houston for all these years, what are some fun shows that you've had that you really want people to maybe revisit, or just kind of talk about some of the artists you've had in the past that you've actually showed here at the gallery, and how long you've been around? How long has the gallery been here?
Well, we opened in 2018. I took over the former gallery space that belonged to Sandy Parkerson. He was here for, since 1985. Wow. And he was really known in Houston as the secondary market art dealer, who's also an appraiser. And he turned 75 and decided that he was going to retire to Santa Barbara, which he did. And so I had a going away party for him.
Oh.
And I got to meet all of his clients. So it was kind of strategic. So that was in 2018. And I think we've had 25 shows. We're in the Upper Kirby Galleries, and we're normally 10 galleries in the Upper Kirby Galleries.
Which is pretty historic and significant.
It's the oldest gallery row in Houston, and we have all of our openings on the same day. And so it's like a really fun art walk, but it's a little different right now because of the pandemic. Sure. So we're not having the big events like we usually do, although we are open. We're open by appointment for people who want to be extra careful, and we're open regular hours from 11 to 6 for people who, Tuesday through Saturday, for people who are okay going out in public. But it's a very small gallery, and we never have many people in here, so it's a pretty safe space.
And it's great, too, because we are actually going to be doing our shows here at the Houston Hour. So, like I said, the guests get a chance to be able to be surrounded with this beautiful art. Every single show that we do here, we're, again, broadcasting live from Heidi Vaughan Fine Art over here at 3510 Lake Street. So we're so excited. Thank you again for opening up your home and your office and your space to all of us here, listeners also, and the guests that come on the show. So we do love the partnership. Love to be able to be
it's a
here.
perfect partnership, and it's so wonderful for us. And I will tell you that during normal times, this gallery is such a fun place to become a regular because everybody is local, and all the artists hang out here. This is the gallery where the artists none of the artists compete with each other. I wouldn't work with them if they had that kind of way. They're really supportive of each other, so they all show up to everybody's everything. And then, I work with, even though it's a fairly small space, you'd be amazed at the people who've been in here.
Yeah.
We have some pretty fabulous collectors, and art collectors in general tend to be pretty intelligent. They're attracted to this kind of stuff, and they're just really great. I just love my clients. I feel like anyone who walks through the door is just a gift to me.
Oh, well, this is awesome. Well, speaking of gifts, we're going to just jump right in with our very first guest, and go from there.
Thank you, Mr. McKhinney. I'm so delighted to have as my first interview as co-host the fabulous Emilie Duval, who is an artist who shows at Heidi Vaughan Fine Art. She is one of 20 Houston artists that I represent. And Emilie's from Paris, but she lives here in Houston. And the artists who show with me are from all over the world. They live here, but they're from all over. They're very much like our city.
Yeah.
They're very diverse. So, Emilie, hi.
Hi, Heidi. I'm so glad I am your first host.
It's pretty cool. So I guess we should talk a little bit about your background. You're from Paris. You moved to Texas. You didn't live in Houston first. Am I right?
No, I was living in Beaumont for 6 years, and I did some back and forth living from Beaumont, then Belgium, and then back to Houston.
Okay.
Originally, I'm from Paris, but I left Paris a long, long time ago now.
Yeah. And how long have you been back in Houston?
I have been back in Houston for the last 6 years.
Well, I will just say that it's such a pleasure to represent you. You are such a hard worker, not to mention incredibly talented.
Thank you, Heidi. And I'm so happy to have met you. I'm here in Houston. I love Houston. I love Texas. It's like my home now. I'm so happy to have a show with you in March, this March.
So we're going to talk about the order of the simulation.
Yeah.
But maybe before we get to that, I'll just mention, I know your background, you studied law, and you also took some courses at the Louvre.
Yes. So I wanted to be an art auctioneer. So I went to law school and the School of History of Art at the Louvre, but I never finished because since I'm a kid, I have been completely attracted by art, making art. So I think I started my first work of art around 6 or maybe 8 years old. And I was also fascinated by economics, which is a bit strange. So that's why the logical sense of things was to be an art auctioneer. But I realized it was not my thing. It was maybe too mercantile. So what I've done is I just plunged into being an artist. I'm a self-taught artist because I wanted to have a complete freedom. And not only an intellectual freedom, not to be in a certain sphere of thinking, but also creatively speaking. The way I did it is I went to museums for years and years, and I reproduced the old masters since the 13th century.
Yeah,
and
that's what you do in art school. I don't know if you know that, Mr. McKhinney, but a real starting point. You'll see this when you're at museums here in Houston. You'll see students, looking like sort of they're copying a work of art that's at the Museum of Fine Arts.
Well, and this question is for both Heidi Vaughan and, of course, Emilie as well. Take listeners on a small little example of what an art auctioneer does. I mean, most people might think of, the auctioneer auctioneers over at the rodeo, right? I mean, here they are, but very different though,
Oh
right?
my gosh, that's so interesting that you should make that comparison.
Yeah, give people an idea of the difference.
I was at an auction in Houston, and I turned to the person who I was with, and I said, "Oh my God, this auctioneer is so bad." And he said, "This is one of the top auctioneers in the state." And I said, "What is he known for?" And he said, "Livestock." And I said, "Art is not livestock." He was handling it all wrong. I mean, I have toyed with the idea myself.
You'd be a great
I may
auctioneer.
still do. I like to talk.
Yeah.
I am very interested in the mercantile side of art. Obviously, I own a gallery. It's what I do every day. But I work. I work in the secondary market a lot. So I work with here in Houston. I work a lot with Ray Simpson at Simpson Galleries. I work with Christie's, Sotheby's, Bonhams, Phillips. I work with all of them, and it's a pretty exciting aspect of the business for sure. But Emilie actually has a real connection with economics with her series of the 12 Federal Reserve banks. I know we sold some of them to Commerce Bank here in Houston and others. And the thing about Emilie's work is she is the intellectual artist. It's really infused with meaning. She is very much, dare I say, obsessed with digital versus real entities and how they exist in the world. And I definitely would love, if it's okay with you, to talk about the painting that's behind you.
Oh, yeah. So, and again, for those listeners that may be just tuning in, of course, we are now recording our shows at the lovely, the beautiful, the wonderful Heidi Vaughan Fine Art, and we're in the gallery space, which is so exciting because there's amazing art all around us, including right behind me. There is one of Emilie's pieces here, and it's like larger than life. It fills the entire wall. Talk about this piece.
What are the dimensions of White Cube?
White Cubes is 74 by 74 inches. I really want to mention that when I create an art of work, I start from a concept. It's not like I'm going to give you an explanation from the painting I've done. I have an idea, I develop my idea, I write about it, then I found some photos online to illustrate my painting. And for this one, the title is White Cube. I wanted to talk about time, space during the time of a pandemic. And for example, the background of the painting is made of different photos. But on the right side, for example, I took a photo from a cruise ship which has been stranded in the harbor because of the pandemic, because people were sick. And I wanted to talk about the fact that you have physical people, what Heidi was mentioning, the physical entity of people, and they were starting to be dematerialized because people couldn't see them physically speaking, but they could see them through the networks, through TV, for example, or a radio show, for example, talking about them, or through the phone. Then they became like digitally speaking entities that were illustrating the fact that you had a pandemic and you were separated from the physical world. So this is a part, the middle of the painting represents a boxing ring, and it's the same idea is there were only the two of them without any viewers. And it's also related to the fact that you see a game during a certain time and space and how you see people and the image they gave you. And on the left side, it's a map of ancient Rome. I wanted to put this map because it's related to history, but also ancient Rome has disappeared because of the complexity of the society, but also because of pandemics. So it's related. So it relates to the past, the future. So
that historic link and organizations and systems is a big part of her work, and I know you're the history guy. She regularly has history collaged in real specific ways. Emilie works with open source data. She's very fond of using that, and the work is quite complicated. There are many layers and layers of information, and I tell people when they come to the gallery and I'm showing them the work that if you can hang with it,
you will be rewarded.
You will be rewarded.
And also the colors, you can't see it because we are on the radio, but they are very vibrant. And if you come to Heidi Vaughan, Lake Street, 35 Lake Street, you will see you have so many layers. You will be driven by the layers because I'm work with layers. So you have a background with acrylic, you have drawings with ink marker, you have collages that I add on the painting, they merge to the painting. And then I add a last transparent shape. So it's really something with all the colors, the perspectives. Also, you have a lot of perspectives because I work with lines. And Heidi, how do you see it? Or Mr. McKhinney? So
well, it's. I mean, it's generally, it's very abstract. Actually, if Emilie hadn't have just told you that information, you probably wouldn't have picked up that ancient Rome was in there, or
Couldn't
even
see it,
there were boxers or a cruise ship or whatever. But I would say one more key attribute of your work involves your, dare I say, obsession with the French philosopher Michel Foucault and the concept of heterotopias. Can you talk about that?
Oh, yes. So in one word, the heterotopias of Michel Foucault is the other spaces within the society. So, for example, you have a prison, you have a school.
He's really involved with schools.
Yeah. Schools.
Right.
So, for example, if you go to a school, it's a certain space within the society, but the rules are a little bit different, and they do exist. You have the rules, but it's separated from the rest of the environment. And I took this concept, and what I wanted to do is you have your physical entity, you have a value with your physical entity, and you have a dematerialized entity. For example, if you go online, if you have an Instagram account, and you get followers, your digital entity has a value and it becomes valuable. And I want to expand the idea of heterotopias, like the digital world is an heterotopia. And it's not an utopia, because an utopia doesn't exist and it's not valuable, or often it doesn't remain. An heterotopia does exist, and our virtual entity exists. It's a new heterotopia, and I want to expand this to the value of each of us, and then to expand it to the fact that our physical entity will be under the value of the digital entity, if you can follow me.
Super chouette.
Thank you.
Well, I want to talk about the order of the simulation, but I just would like to say, because I think this is kind of funny, the way my brain works, I definitely lean heavy on the creative side. It took having an artist, specifically the one sitting across from me, Emilie Duval, to explain to me what blockchain is. She had a show called The Praxis of Blockchain here at the gallery, and it was a very heady show. The work is really fun and bright, but there really is a lot of meaning, and it was about regulated and deregulated banking systems, right?
Yes, it was about, because I'm fascinated by economics. So I worked in 2006 about the credit history and the upcoming financial crisis. And it's not because I guess about the future of society. It's because I pay attention to all the details, to all the fine prints that people do not read, like all the regulations. So I was fascinated how people lost their sense of mind with the financial crisis. And then I was intrigued by how the Federal Reserve responded to that. And it's a centralized system. And then it led me to explore the centralized system and decentralized system, because the Federal Reserve before was decentralized. And in 1903, it became the centralized system of the Federal Reserve. And with the blockchain, you had a decentralized system. And for me, it's a new system which is coming after the Federal Reserve. And I really want to expand the thinking about how the future of economics, because it's all virtual. And as I'm working on value of the virtual entity, of the dematerialized entity, the blockchain makes a lot of sense. And it's not quite settled now. A lot of people talk about it, speculate about it. But for me, for example, smart contracts, it's not only about money and cryptos, because people, they think about this, but it's just the type of the iceberg. It's more about how society is going to evolve in a completely dematerialized system. And it's what we need to observe. And we need to observe all the fine prints, all the white papers of each company which develops.
Mr. McKhinney, did you know art could do that?
It's as it should, right? It's a conversation piece. We're having a conversation about right now, for example. But yeah, I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's a wonderful reflection of the time we're living in. And at a quick glance, if you just looked through our doors and you saw that painting, I don't think you would realize realize that kind of logic was behind it.
Yes.
It's very cool.
Is that one of your largest pieces? I mean, what's the largest piece that you've been able to create over your time?
3 times this size.
Wow.
She works at a pretty big scale. She has a super cool studio that is in the museum district. That's a 3-story contemporary house with a pool that she doesn't live at. It's her studio. And she has a lot of events there. And it's a real pleasure to take collectors to the studio because it's an amazing space. Her work displays beautifully there. And she actually bought it with the proceeds from her sales. She's that rock solid. So, well, we should probably take a minute to talk about the order of the simulation.
Yes.
Yes, so I will be at Heidi, and also we will expand the show a little bit at my studio for the installations and the videos because I like to do installations. But at Heidi, I will have paintings. I will have like 3 large paintings and smaller ones and medium ones. And it's about the still. I will develop the heterotopias, the functionality of each of us. And for example, I will have one of the painting is named The Column of Hope and Despair. And I've done it during the election process and when they were counting the ballots, the votes, and how people were hoping about one side or the other side. I'm not going to take any side.
Sure.
It's just the process of the society.
I want to interject real quick that Emilie's work is never judgmental at all. It's just pointing out what is. It's not saying one thing is better than another thing. It's just it's very non-judgmental, just pointing it out.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask how our political institutions, which are physical, are seen by others, like through Facebook, through Twitter, how people were seeing others and the process of the elections. And it was not even physical at a certain point because people were argumenting over the internet, and it's the question of, in the society, the fictional politic. It's how you make a fact a reality, and you don't even know if the fact is real or not. It's in philosophy, it's how you treat, and it's the reality, the truth also. So I really want to illustrate that with a painting, and in the painting, in the background, you have the photo of, in New York, a space for news, and it's columns, and you have the reflection of the photo on the top and on the bottom to show people that you have both sides, one physical, one digital, for example. Another painting is about, it's named Structural Star and Dust, and it's about the star city in Russia. And it's another heterotopia because it's a place 1 hour away from Moscow, which was kept as a secret until 1961 because it's the place where you were training astronauts. And I wanted to tell people it's something you were talking about in the 60s. You didn't know it. So it was quite an heterotopia, and it was quite virtual. And nowadays, you had recently, with the COVID, a story about this place because they are very essential workers, essential utilitarian physical entities. And they were starting to be sick about the COVID. And it was how people from the outside of the city were seeing those people. And they had progressively became more valuable, digitally speaking, because of this story. So you will see the painting. It's the Star City. I took the background, the photo of the Star City, and with so many details you can't even imagine, and I won't talk about it today. You need to come at Heidi in March.
So these paintings are about, our current time, the pandemic and everything, but they're not like paintings of people with a face mask on.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
No, it's all about the intellectual thinking about the situation, and
they're very sophisticated.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what's great is the show does open up this upcoming Saturday, 2 days on the 27th of February, which is super important. So we're looking forward to that. Information about the details where they can come and join us at.
Oh, sure. So we're in the Upper Kirby Galleries. For those who don't know, this is the oldest gallery row in Houston. It's been around since the 70s. We're at 3510 Lake Street. We're between Colquitt, Richmond, just 1 block west of Kirby. And and her show is up February 27th through April 3rd. We are practicing all the CDC recommended guidelines for safety, including social distancing, wearing a mask. We can take your temperature when you come in. It is a nice, safe, small environment, and it's really nice to look at some art right now because it's just a great way to relieve a little stress.
Absolutely. And Emilie, how can folks get a hold of you on social media?
So they can follow me on Instagram, Emilie Duval 49.
And Emilie is Emilie.
That's important.
Duval, yeah.
With one L. And you can Google my name. I have a LinkedIn account. I have a Facebook account. Don't hesitate, follow me. And if you have any question, don't hesitate to go to Heidi first in person. And if you can't, you can email her or me at emilieduval.com. Also, I have an email. And don't hesitate because I love questions. And you can shoot any kind of questions because it's good. It makes you think about the work you do.
And, I should just add for anyone who hasn't looked at our website, each of the artists has their own page on the website, and they have a biography and images of their work that we have available, including dimensions, materials. We include the price. I know a lot of our designers and architects really like that because sometimes you know what your budget is and you don't want to call a gallery, and I promise I won't hound you if you do. And we also have on there our secondary market collections. We represent a lot of people that are very well known in town who have collections that are pretty well known. If you're buying art at a large scale, you are kind of always having to sell a little bit too, because you can't just keep getting a bigger house or office. So we handle both ends of it. So if you're not familiar with our website, HeidiVaughan.com, I hope you would check that out too.
Excellent. Well, Emilie, thank you so much for joining us. We are now going to break for some commercials and more of the Houston Hour on 90.1 KPFT.